Welcome back to Proptly Speaking. I'm Abby.
And I'm James. And if you're just joining us for the first time, well, you're in for a real uh, dive deep.
Yeah, absolutely. Our show, it's a bit different. We're not really here to sensationalize the crimes themselves. Instead, we're really focused on the early lives of serial killers, like before their first known murder. It's about, what shaped them.
Right. It's all about the trajectory, the path they took, the environment, their childhood, all that stuff. And today we're going to really zone in on those often missed warning signs and try to map out a pre-murder timeline. It's a heavy topic for sure, but super important.
So, why even go there, right? Why dig into these really dark, formative years? Like, what's the point of focusing on childhood and trauma and those early, seemingly minor crimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's not about, making excuses for what they ultimately did. Not at all. That's super important to stress.
Exactly. It's more about trying to understand the blueprint, isn't it? Like, what were those foundational elements in their childhood, the traumas they might have experienced, or even those really early, seemingly minor crimes?
Because I think for us it's just so crucial to grasp those complex origins. It's not just boom, someone's a serial killer. There's usually, a very long, often disturbing lead up that we're trying to explore.
So, diving right into that, when we talk about these early years, what are some of the really, really common themes we see in the childhood environments of these individuals? I mean, it's not always the same, but there are definitely patterns, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you often almost always see incredibly dysfunctional family dynamics. We're talking about, homes marked by severe parental conflict, maybe even outright abandonment or neglect, both emotional and sometimes physical. It's rarely a stable, nurturing environment.
Yeah, it's like a complete lack of that foundational security. And you mentioned neglect, which is huge. I think people often think of abuse, but neglect can be just as damaging, maybe even more insidious, because it's the absence of something vital.
Totally. It leaves this huge void. And what about like some of the early behavioral patterns, especially those that, in hindsight might point towards something like developing psychopathy? What do you typically see there?
Well, I mean, you often hear about things like animal cruelty, even at a very young age. That's it's a huge red flag, obviously. Or maybe a fascination with fire, arson, or, chronic truancy from school. Just a general profound lack of empathy, even towards peers or pets. It's like they're just not connecting in the way most kids do.
And you can just imagine how that kind of environment, combined with those early behaviors, just totally warps their developing worldview, right? Like, if your world is chaos and neglect, how does that shape how you see people or, the value of life?
Exactly. It's like if your primary caregivers are, erratic or absent, you learn that the world isn't safe and maybe that relationships aren't reliable. And that really sets the stage for how they interact or don't interact with society later on.
Speaking of that chaos and neglect, it really just brings us directly to the impact of trauma, doesn't it? Because these aren't just like unstable homes. They're often environments ripe with really specific, profound traumatic events.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about things that go far beyond just unstable. It's often really severe physical abuse, chronic, brutal beatings, or even sexual abuse is unfortunately a really common thread in many of these cases. And then, as we touched on, that severe emotional neglect, being consistently ignored, invalidated, or just left alone without any real emotional connection.
Yeah, it's like a complete shattering of their sense of safety and self-worth, right? And from a psychological perspective, how do experts even begin to untangle the long-term impact of something like that? Because it's not just like a bad memory, it physically changes things.
Exactly, James. It's not just a memory at all. Psychologists look at how these repeated traumatic experiences, especially in early formative years, actually shape brain development. It can affect areas linked to emotional regulation, impulse control, and, crucially, empathy. Like, if your amygdala is constantly on high alert from fear, it can make it harder to process other emotions, particularly those of others.
So it's almost like they don't even develop the capacity for normal empathy because they're so busy just trying to survive or deal with their own internal chaos.
Pretty much. And you see it manifesting in severe mental health issues later on. Things like complex PTSD, obviously. But also, it's really strongly linked to the formation of personality disorders, especially antisocial personality disorder, where there's a profound disregard for the rights of others, or even narcissistic personality disorder, where they develop this grandiose sense of self to compensate for deep-seated feelings of worthlessness stemming from that abuse or neglect.
Right. It's like a defensive mechanism that just completely warps their entire personality and how they relate to the world and other people. It's a terrifying ripple effect, isn't it? This trauma just seeping into every part of their being. It's a terrifying ripple effect, isn't it? This trauma just seeping into every part of their being. And, often what we see flowing directly from that kind of profound psychological impact are these early behavioral manifestations, right? Like these seemingly minor crimes.
Exactly. These aren't just, isolated incidents of a kid misbehaving. We're talking about behaviors that, in hindsight, scream warning sign. Think about things like animal cruelty, for instance. It's shockingly common in the histories of serial killers.
Yeah, that one always hits me hard because it's not just a phase, is it? It's often a precursor to violence against humans. It's like practicing in a way or expressing that pent-up aggression.
Totally. Or arson, too. Setting fires. That's another really, really strong indicator. The destructive urge, the thrill of controlling chaos, the disregard for consequences, it's all there. And then you also see things that aren't necessarily violent, but they show a complete breakdown in social norms like chronic truancy from school, constantly running away, petty theft that becomes, habitual.
It's not just one of these things, though, is it? Because, a kid might act out, they might skip school once or twice, but what we're looking at is what? A pattern? A cluster of these behaviors?
Yeah, exactly. It's the clustering and the escalation that makes them so critical. One isolated incident, okay, maybe it's a troubled kid, but when you see a child or adolescent engaged in, say, animal cruelty and arson, and they're also chronically truant and showing no remorse for any of it, that's where the alarm bells should really be ringing, loud.
Right. Because it's demonstrating a complete lack of, I don't know, a conscience almost, or just a disregard for any kind of societal rules or the feelings of others. And it's like they often start small, these behaviors, right? But then they just gradually get more intense, more destructive.
Absolutely. It's that progression. They might start with small animals, then move to larger animals. They might start with, setting a small fire in a trash can, and then it becomes a building. That escalation in severity, coupled with the frequency and the variety of these early problematic behaviors, that's what makes them such often overlooked warning signs. People just they dismiss them as kids being kids, when in reality, it's often a much darker prelude.
So, Abby, when we like put all of these pieces together, right? The childhood environment, the profound trauma, these escalating early warning signs we just talked about, it really does paint a picture, doesn't it? A path.
Yeah, it's almost like a funnel, all these different influences and experiences just narrowing, 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 pushing them towards this inevitable point, this final stage of psychological deterioration before that first known murder.
Right. It's not just like one bad day. It's this culmination of everything. And you see this period immediately preceding that first violent act. It's often characterized by an even greater sense of isolation, maybe increased fantasy lives, or a complete detachment from reality.
Exactly. It's like the last vestiges of, I don't know, social connection or any kind of functioning empathy just completely erode. They've been practicing in a way with the animal cruelty, with the arson, with smaller acts of violence or control, and now they're ready to escalate to the ultimate form of control.
And it's at this point, all those risk factors we've been discussing, they're not just present, they're like hyper present. They've reached critical mass. The individual is truly on the brink.
So, James, thinking about everything we've discussed today, it's just so incredibly challenging, isn't it, to identify these warning signs in real time, like before it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely, Abby. I mean, we're looking back with hindsight, right? But for parents, teachers, even law enforcement, it's incredibly complex. And that's why, honestly, continued research into prevention, early intervention, it's just so vital.
Couldn't agree more. It's about understanding, not excusing, and hopefully using that understanding to prevent future tragedies.
Exactly. And we really appreciate all of you tuning in today for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening to Proptum Speaking. And join us next time when we'll be shifting our focus a bit to explore the surprising origins of forensic psychology as a field.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating one, so don't miss it.